All right. So then is it officially started now?
Yes, I believe it has.
All
Thank you
right.
for your patience.
Yes. Well, I guess I should start by saying, my name, I am Eddie Akins, and this is my oral history interview for my Anthropology 100 class. Um, I guess you should also introduce yourself and your relation to me.
Okay, I'm Shelly Knight, and I'm Eddie's grandmother on her maternal side.
Yeah. So, because initially I wasn't exactly sure who to interview. But then when I was talking to, you know, she was like, she basically just pointed you out, and I was like, oh yeah, you're perfect because you have like a direct anthropological thing that I can talk to you about. So,
Cool.
but I guess there's a few opening questions I have here for you. So,
Okay.
first of all, can you walk me through your background and how it has shaped your career path?
Okay. Well, you'll probably hear a lot about um, the Lord because that's really who shaped my career path. So I accepted the Lord when I was 15, and I've just really asked God for his direction for my whole life. I mean, he led me to Eugene Bible College, and then I felt like he led me to Alaska, where I taught kindergarten, first grade, third grade for a number of years in the Wasilla area. And then I headed out to um, Calskag, a very remote Eskimo village, and taught Head Start out there, so a preschool aged children out there. And and then when I moved to Washington, I started out as a Head Start teacher, and then just kind of moved up and was promoted from there to the point where I am now. I am a coach consultant for the quality recognition team in Washington, and specifically more in the Olympic Peninsula. So, but I can talk a little more about that a little bit later. But that's kind of what led me to what I'm doing right now. And I love my job.
Oh, that's good. Well, so what motivated you to pursue the field you're in?
Well, when I was in Bible college, I started to do an after school program with children that were in a private Christian school, and really enjoyed that part of the teaching and education and doing activities with them. And so I continued to pursue education field at college, and also intercultural studies. So mission work and things like that. And I really wanted to originally teach overseas, but I think that I did a cross-cultural um, education and teaching job when I was really in Calskag. Wasn't necessarily overseas, but it was quite a ways away where you couldn't
Right.
drive to it.
Yeah, you've also been on several missions trips before as well,
Yes.
right?
Yep. Yep.
Belize and Jamaica, I know are two of them.
Yes. And besides those two, just got back from a mission trip to Mexico.
Yeah.
Also been on a trip to St. John in the Virgin Islands. I was actually went there for an interview to teach there and see where we would be living. And but that didn't work out. It was only a month or so later that we decided we needed to go up to Alaska. So
Huh.
that's what we, and I've been out to Nome several times in Alaska, and
Yeah.
those sorts of things. Yeah.
Well, what are some key experiences or accomplishments that have been significant in your life?
Well, I would say one of the key experiences is that after Bible college, I became a licensed minister, and it was just last year that I got a 25-year award for that.
Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you. And then maybe one of the key experiences would be that I really felt like God called me out to Calskag, Alaska, where I really integrated into the culture. And that was very significant. And I guess I wouldn't have gone out there as a single woman unless I was divorced. And I um, had the terrible experience of having a divorce in my life, but even through the bad, horrible things that happened, I think that God helped me and really called me out to Calskag at that point.
Every closed door opens a new one, right?
Yeah, that's
Something
right.
like that. Well, for my last beginner question, how do you stay motivated and resilient during difficult times?
Oh, I really just totally believe in my being that Jesus has my back, that he loves me no matter what, and he will get me through it. So I keep thinking if he was able to get me through some of the terrible things that happened during that year of divorce, he can get me through anything.
Right.
And I think that's and I also think that my mother really helped me be resilient. She taught me some skills when I was younger because my parents got divorced. My mother got divorced again, remarried, an alcoholic, um had to deal with that for about 5 years of my teenage life. And then he was gone, and the third marriage she had was very good, and up to the end of her life, um, Jean just really loved her. But she was the one that I think really taught me how to get through difficult times and be resilient.
Well, that's really nice. So I guess now I'd like to transition into the main point that I'd like to talk about, which was your experiences among, you know, Native Alaskans and your time in Kauskag and all that. So I have a series of questions about those that I'd like to go into.
Okay.
So the first one is what initially drew you to live and work among Native Alaskan communities?
It probably started when I moved up to Alaska. Actually, it probably started before that because in when I was in Bible college, I had a vision of some rather olive, maybe darker skinned children that I was talking to that didn't really have slanted eyes, but had different shaped eyes than what I have normally seen in Asian or anything like that. And when I went up to on my first mission trip to Nome, Alaska, I went there and looked into the eyes of the children and realized immediately that's who it was, that it was Native Alaskan children. Um, and then all through the several 10 years or so that I lived in Alaska on the road system, I really had some good Native Alaskan mentors that really mentored me in their culture, traditions, their ways, even some of their language. And I felt like that was kind of a real good base for me to go out there. And so then um, initially, the first time I went out to Calskag, I went out with my friend Rachel and her daughter and my granddaughter, your sister.
Yes, I
This
remember that.
yeah, and we went out to kind of do some mission work out there. We did a vacation Bible school and just a number of other little things out there. And so when I came back, I really enjoyed my time out there. And I picked up a paper on my way back and was looking through like the job listings, and there was a job of all things out in Calskag. So I said, okay, well, I'll apply for that. It was a teaching job with Head Start. I applied. They gave me an interview. Uh, over the phone. It was a phone interview, and then um, they called me back a couple days later and wanted me to come out there to hire me. And so then I was out there probably within about a week. So it was really, really fast.
Hmm. So can you describe your experiences living in a native Alaskan village?
I loved it out there. I know it was very isolated. It took 2 airplane rides to get there. Well, the first time I went there, it took an airplane ride and a little bit bigger airplane, and then we boated down the river an hour and a half to get there. So it's very remote, um, very isolated. There's only about 500 people out there in Calskeg. But I learned how to fish, hunt, drum. Um, Even some of the kids and people taught me the two-step at fiddle dances, so I could do that. They taught me how to ride a four-wheeler, a snow machine. All of those are super important out there. So it's not just fun. It's definitely, you have to learn to live and use those types of equipment. So
Right,
those
because
are
I remember seeing those like pictures and hearing stories about your first time on a four wheeler or a snow machine, stuff
yeah,
like that. So,
yep, yeah. So that's some of the experiences that I had that I loved.
oh, very cool. So how did you integrate into the daily life and routines of the community?
I probably did that right away. So my Head Start job um really helped because I had to form a policy council with parents. I had to have a parent committee. I had to visit homes. So I was in their homes talking to them, and that was almost immediate. That was right away. I needed to do all of those home visits before I even started, which was
Yeah,
like
because
weekly.
that's a very cultural thing for Native Alaskans, right?
Yes, yeah,
Yeah.
and for Head Start too. And so the day I arrived, one of the girls taught me how to ride my four-wheeler because I didn't even know how to do that. So we rode all over, up and down both villages, and and then about a week later, I gathered the children together to help clean up the lower village, pick up trash. And I think they picked up, there was a bag each, so there must have been 20 bags of garbage that they
Oh,
had
wow.
picked up all around. And so at that point is when the elders really, I mean, like day 2 or day 3, they really had noticed me and said, thank you for coming, and all of this because I helped them, clean up the trash and stuff. Um, Also had Bible studies, adult Bible studies and kids groups, and partook of cultural events, things like that, all within the first few months. So that's how I really
Yeah,
got integrated into that.
sounded like you had a strong positive impact at the beginning.
Yeah. And I think it was because of my mentoring from Edie and Hans and Betty and um, Hans's mother, Rita, and, some of these native people that were in the Big Lake and Wasilla area that really helped mentor me to really just dive right into the culture.
Right. Well, what were some of the most significant cultural differences or challenges you encountered?
Um, well, I think the language, you know,
Yeah,
maybe,
language differences.
yes. Um, there was, I knew that they were talking about me because they were laughing and looking at me, but I couldn't understand them at first. I got better and better at it and learned some of the language and picked up words here and there and would sometimes say something back to them, and they thought it was very funny. So those were some of the challenges I had. everybody relies on everyone else. You can't be a loner out there. In order to survive in a village like that, you have to hunt together. You need to fish together. You need to help each other, berry pick. But there's also a dark side of the village too, and that was the drinking and the bootlegging, and because of that, there were many different types of deaths out there. So people were killed, you know, because of that dark side of the village that you see in many of the villages out there.
Yeah, from what I understand, that's a pretty common problem amongst a lot of Native Alaskan communities, at
It,
least these days.
it is.
And yeah, which
Yeah.
is sad.
Hmm. It is.
Um, the other thing I wanted to ask is, out in Calsca, they speak Yupik, right?
Yes. Central Yupik.
Yeah, which is the majority of Native Alaskans on the western half of Alaska, or the southwestern,
The Western.
just in
Yes.
the western in general.
Yeah. Central part of Alaska and the western part of Alaska. They do speak different dialects, but they can usually understand each other.
Right. Okay. Well, can you share any memorable experiences or interactions with members of the Native Alaskan community?
Oh, there's way too many.
Well,
But
maybe pick one or
yeah,
two.
yeah, yeah. So one of the most significant um things for me, or memorable experiences, is about 4 months. I was there in the village about 4 months, and the Yupik language teacher approached me and had seen many of the things that I had done in the village already after 4 months. And she wanted to present or give me the honor of having a Yupik name. And there are some other people that have Yupik names, but it usually takes a good year to receive one, if you do get one. And that's because they need to watch what you're doing. You know, so this teacher interviewed me, and she had to then, it took about a week. She had to, it's based on kind of on your birthday, or maybe it was your birth year, no, birthday maybe. And had to talk to some of my friends in the village. She had to talk to my staff that I had in the village there at work, and some of the people at my church, and all kinds of things. I mean, it was this week-long process that they do before they give you a Yupik name. So um then she once they, with the elders, figured out what my name was going to be, then they called me out of my classroom. So this was at work. They called me out of my classroom, and they took me to the front door of the school, and they had me sit on the floor, and they performed this ceremony around me. And they told me that this was that my Yupik name was Sayak, Sayak, and it means red salmon. And they told me that a red salmon is the giver of life to the village, because um, red salmon has the most omega-3s. It's the richest in meat, and it brings life to people. And they said that is kind of what I have been doing, even in the 4 months they've already seen that. So that was very significant.
That
And
must have been a big honor.
yeah, and I still use it. As you can see, it's on my
Yeah,
Zoom, that anywhere that anytime I have a Zoom meeting, it's usually there. So yes, I feel like it's honoring them, and just having that privilege of having that name. So that was one of the most, significant things. A lot of other memories and experiences, but we'll probably go over those as we go along through the interview.
Right. So, how did you contribute to or participate in community activities and events?
Oh yeah, I participated in many community events. Um, I went to basketball tournaments. That's a big thing out there in the winter because there's really not much else to do. So people
Right.
from all over all these villages will come and then they'll have this tournament. I went to fiddle dances and they had, people that would play and they'd charge a little cover fee to get in, but then that's where these people taught me how to dance the two steps. So that was fun. I was a part of what they call Rip the Ridge, and that is a run, and I'm not sure how long it is, but you have to go they have to run up the hill, they have to run up the ridge, and then onto the other side. And so we needed checkpoints. So I was one of the checkpoints when we had that. It was every fall, and that sort of thing. I went to a lot of native dances. Usually those were held in the auditorium or the gym of the high school. Went to elder dinners. I was a part of the Kuskokwim 300 dog sled race. The main, one of the main layovers, 24-hour layovers was in Calskeg. So they'd come up from Bethel and they'd stop in Calskeg and we would feed them. We had right off the river, we had one of the schools where we had all our food and we'd help with the dogs and things like that. And then
That
they'd
sounds
go,
fun.
yeah, then they'd go up to Antioch and come back down and then win the race. So it was a dog sled race and that sort of thing. Also, taught Head Start. That was
Yeah.
community activity and events, included graduation and all kinds of stuff.
Well, um, did you observe any traditional practices or ceremonies during your time in the community?
Yes, I did. Of course, our
As
native dances, right?
Yeah,
The kids that learned how to do native dances, we actually did that in our preschool graduation. We taught them a little native dance for little kids.
that must
And
have been cute to see.
yeah, yeah, it is. They had their headdress on and dance fans and things like that. And so also been a part of Slavic, which is the Russian Orthodox Christmas. And so it lasts for about a week or maybe just a little bit longer after Christmas. So the first part of January. So the kids don't even go back to school until the middle of January after Christmas break because of Slavic. And so they would go from house to house in the evenings and they'd spin a star and then they'd have a story. So I was a part of that. And that was a very fun cultural experience. Um, Also have been to funerals or wakes and feeds. So after 40 days after a person dies, they have a big feed where you go into the person's house, go into their house, and they have like a tablecloth on the floor. So people sit down on the floor and then they have all this food. So you just are, sitting and eating on the floor with the other people around and remembering the person that died and reminiscing, some good thoughts and things like that. So been a
Sounds
part.
nice.
Yep. Yep. So yeah, I did some drumming myself even. They taught me how to drum.
That's cool. So, what are some insights that you gained about the cultural values and beliefs of the Native Alaskan people?
I think that family is a big part of their culture. So there's multi-generational homes. There's grandparents, children, and the grandchildren all living in the same house. And that's so that they can all help each other, right? Sometimes the grandchildren, as they get older, they can help the elders. The elders can help watch the grandchildren while the parents are at work or getting them to school or, whatever that is. Um, and we don't see that down in the lower 48. Um,
Right.
Everybody wants to have their own house. Everybody needs to separate from their parents. But not up there. It's very, very important to that family and children are very important in that culture. Um,
Honestly, I feel like the separation of family in the lower 48 is kind of a shame compared to, you know, cultural values of family up here.
mhm,
So,
yeah, yeah. And so that's one of the things that I really embrace. Um, I think another thing is if they like you, you'll do well. They're going to accept you into their culture, into their village. But if not, it's very difficult. It's very difficult to live because you're isolated, you're alone. Um, and not many teachers, the only ones that go out there are, of course, teachers. And not many teachers last more than a year, very
mm,
few. So they also honor their elders. And that's really important in their culture. Um, we don't see that down here. We don't see that, that where people really honor the elders or the older people, the seniors is what they would call them here. Um, they kind of like put them aside, or they don't respect them, or they don't listen to them, just things like that. But they do up there
yeah.
honor the elders, and the elders eat first, you know, um, when you go into any kind of potluck or dinner, that type of thing. So,
Yeah, like even in like the lower 48, while, seniors may, even be respected in certain circles, is nowhere near the amount of like reverence that they tend to have among Native Alaskan communities, and that's part of the culture.
mm,
So, yeah, it's interesting the differences.
mhm, mhm.
But so how did your presence within the community impact the dynamics or relationships within it?
Um, so I did a lot of prayer walking. I walked down the little streets. There's like two, maybe three
Mm,
streets of the village. I would walk down there and I would pray for the people inside the village. And I would, you know, pray for the children and for the adults. And so there's kind of a cultural thing that if someone asks you to pray for them, physically asks you to pray for them, that you've gained their trust, that it's an honor. It's an honor when people would ask you to pray for them. So after, I do these walks frequently. After a while, people would come out of their house or they'd come out of their building, and they, Shelly's or Sayak. Sometimes they call me Sayak out there, and then they would share an intimate prayer request and ask me to pray for them right there on the street. And I think that was a really huge impact because not many people could do that. Um,
right.
I really think that there was a lot of deaths in the village. But while I was there for those years, there weren't nearly as many deaths as there had been previous to me coming, because there was just a big thing about that. And then kind of after I left, there was a big onslaught of people dying again. So I
Mm,
really kind of felt like I kept death at bay um, for that. So I think those are some of the impacts. They're very spiritual people, very spiritual people. Um, there's Catholic in one village and Russian Orthodox in the lower village. So there's Upper Calskeg and Lower Calskeg that's got about a 3 mile dirt road connection. But all the children are integrated into the schools. So they're all the same, they all go to the same school. And but I think that one of the things that we did was I had a Bible study, an adult Bible study, and we called it Coffee for Jesus. No, Coffee with Jesus.
I think I
And
remember that
yeah,
the name.
yep. So we would gather together, have coffee, and we'd talk about the Word of God. And so I started that, and they liked they liked the Bible study. They liked getting together so much that they asked me to do it at least 2 times a week. They wanted to do it every night. Couldn't do that, but they wanted to do it can we do it 2 nights a week? So I started doing it 2 nights a week. And we just kind of gathered around, and and so we saw people getting saved. We saw children saved, adults saved. We weren't trying. I went to a Protestant or a non-denominational church there, very small one that Mark had, called Calvary Mission. But we never had that, come to our church, now that you're saved, come to our church, on Sunday mornings, right?
Right.
We said we don't want to, that's not culturally appropriate. So
Yeah.
what we did is we equipped and focused on equipping these people that really knew the Lord, and had them go into the churches so that they can infiltrate the churches and try to turn people that are in, because they're so structured. It's, very important part of their life is the church. And so it's to go into that church and to start to really move, um, and see more people come to the Lord, that type of thing.
Hmm. Interesting. Well, did you face any difficulties or misunderstandings due to cultural differences? And if so, how did you navigate them?
I probably did way more offending people than I even knew I did, right?
Yeah.
Um, and uh, but when it was brought to my attention that I had offended somebody, um, whether it was culturally or whatever, I would always go and ask for forgiveness, and I would usually bring a gift to, to show them, to try to make that amends. That's part of the culture too. So those are some of the things that I did to help navigate some of that.
Gift giving is pretty common.
Yes. Yeah. Very important part of the culture.
A question that I thought of that I just remembered was what are some of the differences, if any, between Upper and Lower Calskeg?
Lower Calskeg is Russian Orthodox. Um, and that it's spiritual. So it's Russian Orthodox in lower, and it's Catholic in the upper, mostly Catholic people, except for, the people that goes to Mark's church. And Mark's church was in upper, was very
Right.
close to it. But those are the differences. Many, many, many years ago, there was there was a divide, where people, were saying we need to all be Catholic. Nope, we need to be Russian Orthodox. So they literally broke apart, had this 3 mile dirt road in between it, and that's the main difference. That's why they have a lower Calskeg and a Calskeg, lower Calskeg.
Right. Would you say that there's any like remaining tension between the two?
Sometimes there is, because Upper Calskeg, where the airplane strip is a dry village, which means you can't have any alcohol up there.
Oh,
It's illegal, right? Not that that's much enforced. But
right.
Lower Calskeg is a wet village. So if they can get it, fly it in on the alcohol, if they can fly the alcohol on the airplane, they can take it down to Lower Calskeg and drink it.
Hmm.
And if they live in Upper Calskeg, they have to secretly um hide it and then secretly sell it to people. So a bottle of alcohol is $100
Oh, geez.
for a bottle of it. Yeah. So that's what a bootlegger is. A bootlegger is a person that buys it like from Anchorage or whatever, flies it in, at $20 a bottle and then sells it for 100 and makes the money that way. Um,
Right.
so that would be the two differences. Yeah, definitely the dry village, which means you can't have alcohol, the wet village, which means you can have it and consume it. And then there's
Yeah.
that damp, then there's one in between that, which is a damp village, and that is known as you can fly it in, you can have it in your possession, but you can be the only one that drinks it in that household. You can't sell it, you can't do anything else.
Hmm. Interesting. Well, let's see. So back to my questions. How did you approach building trust and forming meaningful connections with the community members?
I think I was just really genuinely interested in um in the things in their life. I went to birthdays when I was asked to go to birthdays. I went to feeds because they don't ask everybody to go to these, 40-day feeds and stuff. Um, I went to funerals. I went to wakes and I went to clinics when these children were dead and they're lying there. And, um, I went to the clinic to support the family. And I went to basketball games. I held Bible studies and things like that. So all of that kind of helped build trust and form relationships in the community.
Were there a lot of younger deaths out there?
There were um
Hmm.
3-year-old, there were a couple of like 16 and 18. Of course, the 3-year-old, it was an accident. The older teens was suicide.
Oh.
Um, the the adults, the young mothers, some of them were murder.
Mm.
Some of them were, um, an accident related to alcohol. So, those sorts of things. So yeah, there were many deaths out there. It's very sad.
Well, can you discuss any specific projects or initiatives you were involved with while working with the Native Alaskan community?
Yeah. So the first Halloween that I was there, we did a big coat drive and we asked for people like, especially in Wasilla, if you have any, slightly used coats that your children have grown out of, can you send them out to us? We also asked for candy.
I
So
think I remember all that.
yeah, so we had boxes and boxes and boxes of coats that
I
we,
remember the pictures, definitely.
yep, yep. And then we had all this candy and tracts, Bible tracts, little pamphlets, little tiny pamphlets that we handed out. Or, yeah, the first time I think it was just pamphlets. Anyway, yeah, so we had that coat drive and candy drive, and they all came to the church and they tried on coats, hats, gloves, scarves. I mean, they sent all kinds of things. But we did call it coats and candy for Halloween. And then the other really significant thing was I didn't do it the first year, but by the second year, I did what we call Christmas in Calskag. And we I got information from the children, like kind of what they want. I got the names of all the children in the village, 230 of them, I think. And that was from birth to 18 years old. And so we got everybody's name, and a pastor who really initiated this from Louisiana. He was a pastor from Louisiana that I had met. He really wondered if, the children ever got Christmas presents. I said, well, not too many. I mean, some of them do, but it's just they just don't have the means to get it. So between him and me, we organized this Christmas in Calskeg drive, and we got gifts coming from all over the nation, all over. Washington, Hawaii, California, Texas, Louisiana, Georgia, all the way over on the eastern seaboard. There were several people over there, Massachusetts, New York. They all started, Florida especially, they all started flooding in with these gifts. And the gifts came in these boxes that were mailed. They were shipped, so they're coming in on the cargo planes, and we would go and pack up trucks and take them over to the church. We asked everybody to have them all wrapped and marked, either marked with their, the child's name, and that kind of thing. So that was real significant part of what I was able to do and accomplish out there, was to get a Christmas present for every child in the village. And it caught media attention. So first of all, the Valley, the newspaper in the Palmer area wanted to do an article on me. So they wrote up this article and printed pictures of me in the newspaper. And then Channel 2 News caught wind of it, and wanted to do an interview with me. So the week before we distributed the gifts, she did a phone interview with me. So they had pictures that they were showing on the news as I was speaking, and telling them, explaining them what's to do. Then they found out that, in the course of what I was telling them, I said, yeah, well, I'm coming in to Anchorage because one of my students has leukemia and is at the Native Hospital. And I'm going to deliver these gifts that were sent up. I'm going to deliver them to her specifically. So that's when they brought their news cameras in and all of that, and did that human interest story that they aired for probably 4 days over that Christmas
I
week.
remember I was technically on camera in that
Yes,
interview because
yes, you were.
I helped deliver her presents.
Yep,
I was probably what, like 8 or 9 or something.
yeah, probably, yeah.
So, but
Hmm.
yeah, I remember all that. I remember watching the interview.
Yep.
Oh, it was really cool that my grandma was on TV.
Yeah, yeah. So
But
it was significant. We did that the next year as well. So became much more proficient, as the years went by. Was able to get them to do that, understand what we needed to do, how we needed to distribute them, all kinds of things.
right. Oh, very cool. So, how did your time living among Native Alaskan people influence your perspective on indigenous cultures and issues?
So I think that I realized I had a white privilege, that because even though I have native blood within me because of my grandfather, he was Blackfoot. Um, it it was never spoken of in our house at all. It was it was a shameful thing. And my
Mm.
grandfather never spoke of his heritage. And and even my mother grew up on the Indian reservation for a number of years, probably till she was about 8. So, um, but they never really spoke about it. So, uh, I had, I realized that I still had that privilege because I went to, public school. I was in the mainstream of Washington schools and those kinds of things. So I had to really understand people from their cultural perspective, and and so my time out there, I really needed to think like they think, you know, and and it really triggered, probably that DNA already that within me. It triggered some things to really um, understand their culture, understand their issues, and my help. It couldn't be from a savior complex. I couldn't go in and say, "Hey, I'm here to help. I'm going to get you, this, or I'm going to get you
Right.
that." It had to be from a mindset of asking questions, of asking them questions so that they can figure out what is best for them to do. So if it was like um, they have 2 or 3 children and the father is gone to Anchorage, left them, and there's no money coming in. There's no child support, so I would just begin to start to ask them, you know, or give them well, we can go talk to this person or we can talk to this agency. What do you think about that? And kind of just ask them questions and have them figure it out, because if they figure it out, then they can help other people figure out, their friends or other single women to figure out how to get on child support and get child support coming in and those sorts of things. So um,
Right. So you would basically help them by showing them the opportunities they can take advantage of, and then letting them decide what to do.
yeah, yeah.
Well, that's very admirable. So, so what did you learn about sustainability and traditional like ecological knowledge from your experience with them?
So they live on subsistence living, and that is where you have to go hunt, gather, fish in order to live. So all of our food, if we wanted to eat, we needed to go do those things. And we needed to share those with the elders who could not go do that, or single moms who could not go out and hunt and fish and stuff like
Right.
that. We grew our own our own crops. So they would hunt birds, beavers, moose, um, even seals and whale, not in the interior where I was, but some of the outlying areas would do that. They would go gather berries on the hills or in the fields and that sort of thing. And we had a fish camp, and the family that had really took me in, the Ostall family, they had a fish camp. So it was out on the old river. So you take a boat, you go out to this fish camp, and there's a steam room out there. That's how they took their baths, is with the steam rooms. It would be like a sauna, I guess. It would be similar to a sauna. You have hot rocks, you put water on it and you bathe.
Right.
And they had a house out there, 2-story, that they had built. They had the racks to dry the fish. They had, of course, the docks to get the fish. The fish wheel they would get it with a fish wheel usually, and it's a big thing that goes in the water and it catches the fish in these in these things, and then it would dump them out on the,
Hmm.
kind of on the dock, so where they could cut them, and then they would cut them, clean them, they would hang them on the rack, and then they also had um smokehouse in there. They had a smokehouse that they had built, and so all of those little buildings were out there. They had a fire pit out in the yard so they could have, roast moose meat and roast fish all over it, and roast um, hot dog s'mores, just different things like that.
Yeah, all kinds of things. It sounds like.
Yep. hmm Yeah. So that was part of the fish camp experience. I liked going out there and doing that during the summer. During the winter, we didn't obviously do too much of the fishing, but we went out there camping. So it was a time to get out of the village, and then we would take snow machines, of course, to go out there, and we'd spend the night out there and stuff like that.
Because yeah, I know that one thing about living out there is that groceries are sparse and expensive.
Yes. Yeah.
Like what was a gallon of milk, $10 or something
Yep.
like that, which is a lot.
Yep. A gallon
So,
of ice cream's $35.
oh my.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's I can see why you'd go hunt and like use every part of a moose rather than buy something at the store.
Exactly. Yeah.
So, and then the other thing I was thinking was just kind of like you touched on it earlier, but like what are some things like that they would do to pass the time during winter? Because winters up here are frankly awful, and with the isolation and stuff down there, it must be, a
hmm
lot harder. So I was
Yeah.
just curious.
Yeah. So they did a lot of fiddle dances, where they have this little band come in, and guitar, and uh, like a fiddle, violin, and drums, and then they'd have these little dances. They had bingo, and bingo would go on in the community hall as well on certain nights of the week, and then they'd have potlucks. They'd have basketball tournaments. Again, probably one a month easily,
Hmm.
and so those are, and then of course we did snow, snowshoeing. We did cross country skiing, did a lot of that. We went on trips on our snow machines, just out to go sledding down the hills, and make a fire and roast moose meat and hot dogs, and all of that. So all of those are winter activities that we did. A lot of those kinds of things. Birthday parties, of course, and just the other kinds of stuff of getting together, and um, Bible studies, those kinds of things. So
Right, ways to come together to get through how awful the winters can be.
yeah, right. Very, very cold, right? Very
Yeah,
cold, very
very
dark.
cold, very dark,
Mhm. Yeah,
and then
yeah, you can be very isolated, and that's how come a teacher won't stay more than a year, because they just can't handle it.
yeah, like I'm sure stuff like SADS is pretty
Mhm.
bad on those types of isolated communities.
Yeah,
Seasonal
yeah.
something depression.
hmm
So yeah, but this is my final question. So how has your experience living and working with Native Alaskan people influenced your personal and professional growth?
Oh, I really carry the values and culture, and love for the natives with me wherever I go. It's become ingrained in me. I feel very offended if there's something that's said, again, whether it's intentional or non-intentional about um, native cultures. I feel offended by that, as if I am part of that, which I feel I am, because I've been adopted into that village, adopted into the
Yeah.
Onsdale family there. um, and given a you pick name. So I do feel like I am a part of that, even though I didn't grow up and live there. Um, I just lived there as an adult. So uh, so I've really pursued my learning of the Native culture when I came to Washington. And because I realized as I was talking with some of the tribal people that the customs and cultures in Alaska had very, very similar customs and cultures down here. Now every tribe is different, but there was just so many general, general things that were the same.
A lot of cultural similarities.
Yeah, yeah. So that so that really helped. And so right now I have an official title that I have a specialty in tribal relations. And that is my official title at work and in my coaching and consultant job that I have. So I will coach or consult the different tribes in the Olympic Peninsula. There's 9 of them that have
Mm,
early learning programs um, on their reservation, and I help the other tribal coaches because some of them are way, like Nia Bay is like way out there. It would probably take me 5 hours to
oh,
to
gee.
drive out there from my house. So there's coaches out there in that area that help. So I help with them. I go to many different indigenous trainings. I have established a land acknowledgement, a written land acknowledgement with pictures that is hung on in every um, office of um, in our company in the Olympic Peninsula. And not only have I, established that visual in each of the offices in our region, but I've also been able to talk about it in a state-wide training of all the other coaches in the state, said, this is what we've done. I encourage you, maybe this is something you want to do, is have this. And I made one for myself. Let's see if we can see. I made one for myself. It's
Yeah,
got
yeah.
pictures. It's got pictures of me and Calskag, and this one here is Squaxin Island. And then it has the written land acknowledgement that is written by a Salish elder that I met in British Columbia. And I asked him about a written land acknowledgement and how to do those. And he gave me some ideas. And then through the course of this training that I was in with him, he said, come here, come here, come here. I wrote, and he wrote it out for us, and it's the kind of land acknowledgements that are not only given verbally and at the beginning of every meeting, but they, in British Columbia, they're posted on some of the main government buildings. So the written land acknowledgement that he did is posted on some of the main government buildings. So he wrote that for us. He wrote that land acknowledgement
That's really cool.
and stuff like that. So we just added our different tribes in the village. So it says, we, the Child Care Action Council, acknowledge and accept that we work within the land boundaries of the Salish peoples, specifically the Lower Elwha Clallam, Nia Bay Maka, Chehalis, Nisqually, Skokomish, Squaxin Island, Shoalwater Bay, Quinault, Ho, Quileute, Jamestown Sklallam, Port Gamble Sklallam, and Suquamish. We will always do our best in our work to uphold the languages, cultures, values, and beliefs of these now present and ancient peoples. So that is just something that was very dear to my heart. And through a bunch of people in my company, we were able to produce it and get it up on the walls along with different artwork. I mean, not only did they just have, the picture and the thing, but some of them actually bought artwork from local native artists and put that up there. along with their things. So it really, um, that is one of the things that, really have influenced my personal growth, professional growth as well. So
Right.
oh, the other thing
Yeah.
I do is I facilitate a tribal group. So, um, and they call that a professional learning community. But yeah, so those are the things that I've done.
So I was wondering, what are some challenges that you commonly see among your current work for like native people you work with?
Um, they, I think some of and I work in the early learning or the childcare part, and I don't know if I. So some of the things that they are able to do, they're sovereign nations. They make their own laws. They live their own, it's a
Right. Yeah.
country like within a country, right? Um, and so sometimes that sovereignty clashes with the state regulations or rules. Like the Nisqually tribe is on the Nisqually River, lives along the Nisqually River. Well, many years ago, they had a lot of fish, what we call fish wars, where the natives, that was on the reservation were getting the fish that they need to feed their families. And the state came in and said, you can't do that. And they confiscated all their nets and they confiscated their
Mm,
boats. And so there's a lot of treaty work that has to, kind of um, go on. As far as the early learning, it's trying to get the money they need, the grant, through grants to do the things that they need to, or they want to do for the children in their community. COVID was big, right? Because
right.
if COVID got, you know, exposed into a community like that with intergenerational homes,
Yeah,
right?
with how tight knit all the community is.
It's gonna
Yeah.
it could wipe out a tribe, you know,
Yeah.
or many, many people in the tribe. So they were very, very careful. They wouldn't let anybody on the reservations, unless they had some kind of you know, I don't know if they had a pass system or however they did that,
Some sort of like vaccination proof or something, or when eventually that came out.
mhm, yeah, yeah. So those are some of the difficulties that they face. They still face, you know, um, things with fish wars from time to time, treaty problems,
Right.
those sorts of things.
And then I was curious, what are like some stuff about like languages and language revitalization and stuff like that. Do you work with any of that?
Yes, yes. Um, so two of the tribes that two of the tribes that I work with, and some of the ones in the upper part of Olympic Peninsula as well, um, are bringing their cultural language back. They're teaching the children how to say hello. They're teaching them many, many other words. The tribe at Squaxin Island takes the children up to the tribal museum every Tuesday where they have a language lesson from the language teacher that's at the museum. And they play little games and they are learning the language and bringing that back into, and then the children are bringing it home to the adults who might not have ever learned their language. Um, Out in Nisqually has somehow created a software program that has the Lushootseed language that they're going to make available to everybody who speaks that language. And it's an interactive game, uh, not a like a video game, maybe, right?
Right. I,
That,
I I think I get what you mean.
that type of thing, some kind of a learning program, and they have to match the picture with the Lushootseed word so they're doing these kinds of things, and so that they're teaching the children that way as well, and it's going to make that known. So we are seeing a lot more of the language. There's also a dual language designation grants. So these tribes that are bringing their language back are getting quite a bit of money per classroom to be able to, stimulate that and create more things and opportunities for the children to learn.
Hmm. Uh, I think I only had one more thing I was thinking about. So, what's your I guess do you have an opinion on stuff like the I don't remember what it's called. It's abbreviated as NAGPRA, but it's basically like a Native American Protection Act for like artifacts and remains found that belong to their tribes and how they have sole rights to it and what happens to it. And I was just wondering if if you've ever encountered something like that where you've had to like deal with archaeologists or anthropologists digging up native things and any like red tape with stuff like that or not.
It's really interesting. There was an article on the news just like Friday, like just a couple days ago, where the somebody in Washington was digging and then found all of these artifacts. There was a whole bunch of them all laid out, spread out, and instead of keeping them, they are going to be giving them back to the tribes that they belong to or the tribe it belongs to. So we are seeing more of that. I think that Washington State, I would tend to think that Alaska as well, because there's so many natives that they do have more of an affinity to give, if an artifact was found, to give it back to the tribe. I
Right.
know, I know today I was actually at an antique store, and there was this little section of Indian um, Indian things, and there was a pair of mucklucks there, boots made out of seal skin, and I'm sure it's seal fur, and it was beaded and all of
Mm,
that. And I kind of felt offended. I'm like, why are those in an antique store and not with the tribe that made it,
right.
And and who knows if they were authentic, although I do know they were made out of seal skin on the bottom and fur, because I have that type of stuff, and I've seen it before. So but yeah, that was just now that you mentioned that, that's just one of those little things like, I need to ask where he got that and how come it's and then I thought I better
Right.
not ruffle the feathers. I think I better just leave. So I just left.
Yeah. Also, I looked it up. It's the Native American Graves Protection and Reparation Act.
Okay.
So yeah, it protects like grave sites and stuff.
Mhm, mhm.
Like because that's a lot of there's a lot of history and bad blood from like archaeology and stuff like that when it comes to just like taking Native American bones and just studying them without,
Yeah.
taking their culture or wants into account at all.
Mhm,
And then yeah, there's a lot of debate and tension around that sort of thing.
mhm.
Yeah. So it's interesting.
Yeah.
But I believe that's all I have. So thank you so much for doing this for one.
Yeah.
Um,
You're welcome.
this was yeah, I really appreciate that you took the time to do this with me. So thank you. And I think I have what I need. So
Okay. Good. Good. Well, I enjoyed doing this with you, Eddie. It was fun.
it was fun. I enjoyed it. So um yeah, I think we're good.
Okay. I'm gonna